so we can go ahead and I'll turn it over to Kathy. And I set up my settings, so you should be able to share the screen.
Thank you, Katie. Folks, I am going to leave my video off so that my Zoom doesn't crash on us. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Thank you. Let's do this, folks. Can you tell me, in order to make this really useful, so I'm not just talking, although I do love to talk, why don't you put in the chat the products that you are either currently selling, or we could go around the room, Katie. You decide how you want to do this. I'd like to know what you are currently selling or what you think you might want to sell at a farmer's market if you're not already selling.
Let's throw those in the chat just for the sake of time, because I feel like our participants is going to be growing.
Aha. All right, so you put it, then I'll make sure that I cover all of those pieces. And then in the meantime, I'm going to grab the screen, share the screen. Go to here. There we go. I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet. There you go. Oh, that's good. Hang on. Let me go back to chat. More chat. Ah, Sarah, vegetables and sewing products, kids clothing. Got it. Well, vegetable, Sarah, you picked a good one, because vegetables will be product of the farm. You don't need to have a license for that. Marshmallow products, you'll need cottage. I think marshmallow can fall under cottage food. Eggs, easy. Well, maybe not. When you say chicks, are you thinking, Cammie, are you thinking live chickens, chicks, baby chicks? Ooh, okay, well, we can't sell live animals at a farmer's market, but so that's all right. We could cook them first. All right, let's start. Okay, so I'm Kathy Zeman, Executive Director of the Minnesota Farmers Market Association. I also am a certified organic livestock farmer, because all of my land is slopey and highly erodible. So we put it in grass and I graze livestock on it. And I helped start Riverwalk Market Fair here in Northfield and sold at a farmer's market for a number of years. So I've had great, wonderful, successful stories in farmer's market, and I've had spectacular failures as well. So not bad for a teacher, right? So I've kind of experienced it all. Okay, I'm got a couple of different pieces that I'm going, and Katie, if you can keep your eye on the chat for any questions, okay? And you interrupt me if you think we should answer them on the fly.
Will do.
Okay, so folks, I'm gonna minimize that so I can see the screen better. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the top here on this document. So we have something called a quick reference guide that we can share with you. To have a farmer's market in the state of Minnesota, you can just have one. There's no permit or license needed, although there are laws that impact farmers markets. For instance, that we have some in 2014, we had the Safe Food Sampling Law passed, and in that law, we literally defined the word farmer's market, because in that law, there were things that we were going to allow to happen without a license, specific only to farmers markets. And so we had to define farmers market. And so farmers market has now been referenced in other laws. And so it could be theoretically the law of the land, but it's not definitely the law of the land until someone would test it in court. For the most part, it means a farmer's market is just any association of 3 or more people who assemble at a defined location that is open to the public for the purpose of selling directly to the consumer the products of a farm or garden occupied and cultivated by the person selling the product. So you could have 100 people there, but at least 3 of them would need to be someone selling their products from a farm or a garden that you may own or rent or lease. Okay, now we're gonna skip ahead. Folks, vendors, there's no law that says you have to carry insurance as a vendor on your product. Is it recommended? Yes. It's highly recommended that you would buy both a general liability and a product liability insurance policy. General liability would cover you if like somebody walked into your tent and stumbled over one of the tie downs for the tent and hurt themselves. That would cover your general liability. Product liability covers you if someone eats your cupcake and gets sick, or if they bought a chair from you and sat on it and it fell apart and they fell on the ground and hurt themselves. That's what product liability covers you for. So not at all. There's no law in the state of Minnesota that says you have to carry insurance. It's just highly recommended. It's a really good business practice. All right. Dogs are not technically allowed at farmers markets wherever there's food. But if you think about a farmer's market, the pathway between, like if you have a stall, tents, we call them tents or stalls, booths on both sides of an aisle, the dogs could walk in the middle and that would be legal. So it's really, the dogs cannot enter a booth that would be selling food unless it's a service dog. Music is, so this is a lot of this information in this particular document impacts the market itself, but it also impacts you as a vendor. So right here under taxes, if you're going to sell at a farmer's market, your market manager has to have you fill out the Minnesota Department of Revenue's form ST19, whether you collect sales tax or not. And then your market has to just hang on to that piece of paper for 3.5 years. That document, you will either list the things that you do have to gather tax on, like I sell goat milk soaps. I have to collect sales tax on that. So I would write goat milk soap down. But if all I sold were vegetables, then I would not have to, I would mark the box that says no taxable items. But every vendor has to fill that out for a farmer's market. This is more, yes, markets can hire people. You're going to be hearing from 2 different markets tonight, and they'll talk about if they have any of these food access programs that will, so for instance, farmers markets can have SNAP, EBT at their market. And then the state of Minnesota comes in with taxes and gives more money to SNAP participants in market bucks. So if they are going to spend $10, they get another $10, so they can buy $20 worth of food, SNAP eligible food at the market by only spending $10 of their own. We give them that other $10 from our taxes. And so that helps your SNAP participants, and it's really good for you vendors who are selling SNAP eligible items. The downside is it's a cost to your market. And so your market either has to increase fees to all the vendors or find sponsors to help pay for that program, because that program actually costs the market money. Although now that the state of Minnesota is providing free SNAP card machines and the
Oh, Kathy, we're having a little trouble hearing you.
market can make their own rules for their vendors.
Oh, Kathy, we're having a little problem hearing you just a little bit. You
Sorry.
cut out when talking about the states now providing SNAP card readers. Is that what you were going to say?
Yes. And how about if I slow down a little bit too? I can talk slower. Yes. As of last year, the state of Minnesota is now providing free SNAP card machines and free service. So it makes it a little bit more affordable for markets to be able to offer SNAP. And of course, there's Power of Produce. There's other food access programs. All of those programs are very beneficial to your shoppers and to you vendors that are selling. But just remember, it costs your market money, and then you have to raise that money to do so. Are you okay? Can you hear me okay yet?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Then vendors, remember that if there's no 2 markets that are going to have the same set of rules. Every market can set their own rules, and many of them will be very, very different. There will be some, like Mill City Farmers Market. It allows olives to be sold at it. Well, we cannot grow olives in Minnesota, but the farmer lives in Minneapolis And her farm is owned by her family that lives in Guatemala or Venezuela or someplace. And so because she has a direct connection, she's an owner of her family farm, but in a country that can grow olives, they do ship those olives in. And so she's allowed to sell olives. But there will be other farmers markets that say, oh no, we will only allow food that can be grown within 25 miles of our market. And all of that's okay. Every market is going to be different, and it fits their community in which they're located. So just keep that in mind, that every market will be unique. All right. We have think of all of the borders we have. We have farmers markets located along North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin. And those markets do allow in vendors from other states. And then we just have to help those other state vendors figure out how to obey Minnesota rules. So here's the piece where here's the rules that you all are going to be able to follow. And I'm going to take a quick look at the chat. Cookies, quail, chicken, eggs, marshmallow products, vegetables. Okay, we're in good shape. All right. So for those of you selling produce, so there's something in the Minnesota Constitution. It says if it is 100% product of your farm or garden, and you can own it, you could rent it, you could lease it, but as long as that's your garden, and it could be a 4-foot by 2-foot raised bed, that would still be considered your farm or garden. And as long as you're growing at 100% from your farm or garden, you do not need a license. And you can sell that product anywhere in the state of Minnesota. You could sell it at a farmer's market. You could sell it to a hospital, the school, grocery stores. It doesn't matter. You do not need a license at all to sell a product of your farm to anyone in the state of Minnesota without a license. Should you practice? I'll try to say must if it's a law, and I'll try to remember to say should if it's a good business practice, if we recommend it. It is possible that as your produce farm gets bigger, that you may end up having to comply with the FSMA PSR, and that stands for Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule. But that's only when you begin to sell like $27,000 worth of produce every year, or a combination of other farm products. But there's really good training on this that we offer at a discount in the state of Minnesota. So I highly recommend, if you ever have a chance to take the University of Minnesota Extension's GAP, Good Ag Practices training from Annalisa Holtberg. That's GAP. It's really basic, good hands-on training for growing produce and harvesting it and packaging it up and making sure that everything that you bring to the market is clean and safe. And then the FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule training, that is an 8-hour day, and it is a fire hose of scientific, so much information. I have sat through it a number of times, and I'm a livestock farmer, but it's got such great information. So if you ever have time to go to those 2 trainings, do so. I highly recommend it. So no license is needed if it's all yours. Oh, but what if you know that your neighbor has really good cucumbers and she's not selling at the market, could you just go buy her cucumbers from her and sell them? You can, but you'll need a license because it's no longer 100% product of your farm. And we do that to track, it's called traceability and food safety. So we need to know because what happens if somebody got sick from that cucumber? You're going to say, oh, it's not my cucumber, it's her cucumber. But because there's no paper trail there, then it'll get really messy when we're trying to figure out how to help take care of the people who got sick, right? There's got to be compensation somewhere. So that is why we highly recommend. So then that means that if you're going to get food from somebody else's garden, and it's not yours, then that requires a license. And you're going to say, what if they just give it to me? What if it's just a donation? Funny, in the state of Minnesota, we have a law that defines the word sell. And it pretty much means if you dream about food, it's a sale. It literally it's a long paragraph. It talks about if you think about it, talk about it, transport it, store it, think about storing it. And donate it, give, that is all a sale. We also, by the way, in law define the word food. And it pretty much means anything you eat or drink. It's if you put it in your mouth, that's food. So keep that in mind that you don't need a license if it's all yours. But if you're going to buy from somebody else, then you'll need a license. And they're not expensive. They're like 77. You start out at $77 for this retail food handler license. And if you want more information on a longer explanation of that, you're going to go to the Selling Minnesota Guides. Okay. What if you want to sell mushrooms? Well, mushrooms, if you grow them, then that's a farmed mushroom. You do not need a license. It's a product of the farm. But if you're going to go harvest wild mushrooms someplace on land that you're legally allowed to, then the state of Minnesota says you have to complete an MDA approved mushroom identification course, which currently we only know of one course that's being offered in Minnesota by the Minnesota Mycological Society. And they'll give you a certificate, and then you could sell foraged mushrooms, and you could sell them at a farmer's market or a grocery store anywhere. And the key with that, it teaches you how to identify the good mushrooms that won't kill you, and it'll identify the ones that could kill you. So it's a good class to take. So those of you that are going to sell eggs, you do not need a license if the eggs are 100% from your farm and you own less than 3,000 hens. So I only own 300 hens. So I'm not required to get a license. We still have to follow Minnesota rules on egg handling, and you have to keep your eggs at 45 degrees or lower while you're at the market selling. And you could keep your eggs cold in a mechanized refrigerator. So, like one of the little college refrigerators, if there's electricity at your market, you could plug that in and you could keep your eggs in there, or you could bring them in a cooler with ice. The key is you have to keep them at 45 degrees. Okay. And so what we do when we sell eggs, I have a little $19 digital thermometer that I quickly scan. It looks like a little gun, and I quickly shoot my eggs, right, with the little red laser, and it'll tell me what the temp is. So some people will put one open dozen eggs on their table so people can see the pretty blue or brown or green eggs. Those are the ones you cannot sell because there's no way you can keep those at 45 degrees. But the rest of them that you are selling will be in some other kind of a container where you keep them at 45 degrees. If you ever have a food inspector that visits your market, that's what she's going to do. She's going to have a little digital thermometer, and she's going to scan your eggs. Or if you're selling frozen meat, she's going to scan the frozen meat container and make sure that everything is staying at temp. If you are in this no license needed egg category, MDA would like you to register with them, but it's a voluntary registration. You do not have to. However, many markets still ask you to do that. The reason that you would register with MDA on your eggs, just think like in 2015, 2016, when the avian flu went through Minnesota, it was nice for those of us that did register with MDA, then we would get updates on how the flu was going, if it was in our area, what are some biosecurity things we could do to make sure it didn't show up on our property. But just remember, if you're in this category, you do not have to register with MDA, but they would like it if you did. Okay, eggs. If you have more, you don't have to get a license if the eggs are from your farm, but if you have more than 3,000 hens, then a USDA registration is required. You still have to follow all the rules about keeping them cold. All right. What if you've got your eggs and you need to get, that you only have like 20 dozen that week, and you really know you should have 40 dozen on hand, and your neighbor raises eggs, then you could use your neighbor's eggs. If you buy eggs from another source and then sell them at the market, then you must have an MDA license, and you might be required to register with the USDA. And that MDA will know if you have to register with the USDA. So remember the key here, if it's 100% product from your farm, you never have to get a license in the state of Minnesota. There may be other requirements. Sometimes they'll ask you to take a certain permit or taxes or whatever, but it will not require a license. All right. Meat. Is anybody, no one's selling meat I didn't see on the list, but again, if the meat is 100% product of your farm, you do not need a license. You do have to have your meat processed, however, at a plant that is either USDA, which would mean you could also sell those pieces of meat across the state lines. You could sell them into Iowa or South Dakota or wherever. You could ship them to California. But if you have your animals processed at a Minnesota Equal To plant, then you can sell them anywhere within the state of Minnesota. If the meat is 100% product of your farm, you do not need a license. You do have to have it processed at a USDA or Minnesota plant. So think about the meat that you might process. What about bacon? Bacon from your pig. Well, bacon's got salt, and we don't grow salt on our farms in Minnesota. So that's when you would get a retail mobile food handler license. It's really called a retail food handler license. And then because you're going to a farmer's market, then they sneak the little word mobile in there so that the inspector will talk you through how you're storing your meat, and then they'll inspect your vehicle to make sure that your vehicle is clean as you're transporting it from your storage on your farm to the market and back, because you'll need to make sure that that vehicle is also clean. So, funny story, maybe not quite so funny. One of the second or third times I was loading the back of my pickup up for a farmer's market, I was getting ready to put the big tubs of our goat milk soap in there. And I realized that there was goat manure in the back of my truck. And that's why whenever we think about transporting food, fortunately goat milk soap isn't food, but we always look at what vehicle it's going to go in. So we make sure there's not cat hair in there, dog hair in there, and that we're keeping things clean. Okay. Fish is allowed if you either grow it on your farm or you catch it and there's no off-farm ingredients, there's no license there. If you are going to buy it from another source or you add anything to it, then a license is needed. Poultry and rabbits are handled the exact same way in Minnesota. Again, no license is needed. And poultry and rabbit is different than red meat. So when we talk about red meat, it's beef, sheep, goat, pork, lamb, that. But when we talk poultry and rabbit are in a different category and different set of rules, we actually can, if MDA signs off on my how I'm going to butcher my rabbit and poultry on my farm, then I can butcher poultry and rabbit on my farm and sell it at a farmer's market, but only at a farmer's market. If I want it, and from my home, if I wanted to sell rabbit or poultry at a grocery store, then I do have to go through an inspected plant. And that is different for poultry and rabbit than any other meat. All right. Dairy products, guess what? You can sell all the dairy products you want to, milk all the goats, the sheep, the cows you want to. You do not need a license, but there is a lot of other licenses and permits that you will need. You just don't need a license to sell the milk, but there's a lot of other ones that come with the milk. Dairy is all set at the federal level with the PMO, the Pasteurized Milk Ordinance. All right. For those of you selling maple syrup, and I'm pretty sure Les does his maple syrup, as long as it's just pure maple syrup or maple sugar, and it's from your sugar bush, then you do not need a license at all. You have to boil it down and package it in a facility that meets current good manufacturing practices, so it's a term that they use in licensing. And good manufacturing practices match up with what you're trying to make. So the requirements for good manufacturing practices for maple syrup will be much lower than good manufacturing practices for a processed food. Because in order to boil down maple syrup, you do have to have ventilation out to get rid of the smoke and all of the, as you're boiling it down, the moisture in the air. It just has to be clean at that point, but it doesn't have to be stainless steel or anything like that. Okay. And then depending on where you process it, you can either do maple syrup as product of the farm, but if you didn't have a nice place to bottle it, and you had to bottle it in your home kitchen, then you can't use product of the farm, exclusion from licensing. You'll just sell it under the cottage food exemption from licensing, because cottage food allows you to use your home kitchen in order to process your food. Same thing goes with honey. Pure honey, it's excluded from licensing if it's 100% product of your farm and your hives, whether you own the farm or not. You could be putting your hives on somebody else's place as long as it's your hives and your honey. Same applies with maple syrup. If you're going to package it in your home kitchen, then you can come under cottage food. If you've got some other clean place you can package it, then you can go under product of the farm. All right. And we're going to get to, oh, good job. Then if you're going to add anything to your maple syrup, some people might put cinnamon into your maple syrup or honey. Then you can either come under cottage food and meet the requirements under the cottage food, or you could get a license. Just kind of depends on which way you want to go there. There's more restrictions with cottage food. You can't sell as much. There's not as many places to sell, but you could then at least use your home kitchen. If you got a license, the license is really inexpensive. It's like $125 or $77, but it's what the license requires. And the license is going to require some kind of a commercial kitchen, depending on what the product is that you're going to sell. So now we're going to talk a little bit about cottage food and other kinds of those kind of foods. Do we have any questions right now about product of the farm or the foods that you're growing on your farms?
There's a question in the chat that I'll read off. It says, are there any exceptions for chickens that are processed on your farm? I'm trying to scroll.
Yeah.
Let me read a little bit more here. I believe that if I butcher my own and sell less than 1,000, I am allowed to sell off my own farm, but would need them processed at a USDA or Minnesota Equal 2 facility to sell at a farmer's market?
Incorrect.
Question. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So that's not actually correct. And I have Katie, can you write down that I should make sure I send to you MDA's latest and greatest infographic on poultry and rabbit?
I will.
Okay, because it speaks to this, because this came up a lot this year, because, with COVID-19, we ran out of meat processing plants all over the state of Minnesota. It was not good. And so we began to really look at the law. So for poultry and rabbit, MDA has to sign off on your farm. So because you can't butcher the chickens in mud, right? They're going to make sure you got some kind of a firm floor, you got some kind of a covering over the top. But they'll take pictures, or they might come out and look at it, but they're going to say, yep, you're good to go. The chicken and poultry then that you process on your farm, you can sell from your farm and at a farmer's market, but that's it. You could not sell that at a grocery store. So poultry and rabbit that you process on your farm under that 1,000, you're right on the 1,000 number. But so poultry and rabbit on your farm, as long as MDA is signed off on they're not giving you a license. They're not even going to inspect it really. They're just going to ask you what you're doing and how you're going to do it. And they'll either approve it or they'll tell you how to make it better so you can be approved. You can also hire someone to come in and help you. So there's something called Clean Chicken Company. There's a couple of new companies in Minnesota that they can come to your farm. They've got a mobile unit and they'll come and help you. You have to help them so that you're still butchering them yourselves. You can help them. They'll help you. You help them. Then they can butcher all your chickens, and those chickens and rabbits can be sold from your farm and at a farmer's market. Cannot be sold though at a grocery store, restaurant, hospital, schools. If you want to sell at any of those, then yes, your poultry and rabbit have to be processed at either a Minnesota plant, and that means you can sell those within the state of Minnesota. If you want to sell them across the state line or ship them somewhere outside of Minnesota, then they have to go through a USDA processing plant. Does that help?
Corey, did that answer your question? I'm assuming it did since he's not speaking up. Thanks,
Okay.
Kathy.
All right, and follow up on that one, and I'll get you that infographic, Katie, so that'll help. Okay, so now we're going to go into more cottage food or processed foods. So cottage food, and guess what, folks? Breaking news. We do our so cottage food. The law was passed in 2015, and it allows you to make hundreds and hundreds of food products in your home kitchen, following food safety rules. You are mandated to take a food safety training every 3 years. If you sell under $5,000, then the training is free and there's no registration fees. You have to register. So you cannot sell it at farmer's market without being a registered cottage food producer. And we recommend to every farmer's market manager that they request a copy of the registration certificate. And cottage food is an exemption from licensing. It only allows you to sell non-potentially hazardous foods. So it's all water activity has to be 0.85 or less, and pH has to be 4.6 or less. So it's highly acidic, kills off the bacteria, or dry enough that you can't have bad bacteria grow. Then it's not too moist. If it's too, like some zucchini bread and banana bread get too moist, and then bad bacteria can grow it at room temperature. So those usually, those recipes all have to be tested. And then the tier two, you can sell up to $18,000 per individual. So let's say it's me and my kid. Me and my kid could both register as a cottage food producer. Then we could sell up to 36,000, right? 2 times the 18,000 out of our little home kitchen here. I don't have a kid. Well, I have kids, but they're 4-legged, so different animal. So cottage food. However, we do have 2 bills going through the state legislature right now, and both the Senate and the House are in agreement. And so if this passes, because things can still fall apart, but if this passes, cottage food producers will be able to register as an LLC or a corporation or whatever you need to, because right now it's only individual. And sales cap will go up to $78,000. So that'll be a big improvement for cottage food producers. We are also really highly recommending, sometimes we get yelled at, but highly recommending that every cottage food producer should pay a $25 annual fee. The cottage food industry in Minnesota is growing phenomenally, and MDA does not have enough resources right now to administer it adequately. There's 5,000 registered cottage food producers in this state, and I'm pretty sure there's at least 20,000 of us selling cottage foods. The other 15,000 just haven't registered. They're just not legal yet. So keep an eye on that. We'll be putting that out in our weekly e-blast. If you want to get on our MFMA our e-list, we'll send out information on that. But cottage food is a good deal. You can create a good side business. Just being able to cook good food, make good food, and make it in your home kitchen and sell it to your neighbors. Okay. Anything on cottage food? Any follow up on cottage food?
I'm not hearing anything, so you can go ahead and keep going.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So then we get in here on beverages. You can sell beverages as a cottage food person or a licensed person. And if you're selling beverages, non-alcoholic, they'd have to be water bath canned beverages that still meet the non-potentially hazardous foods guidelines allowed. And if any of you are cottage food producers, we can get you that list too, the list of non-potentially hazardous foods. Going down here, foods and beverages. Let's say though that you want to actually cook up, you want to sell tacos, or you want to sell whatever out of your farmer's market. That actually is a license you're going to get from Minnesota Department of Health. All of our food licenses come from the Department of Ag, except for anything that's ready to eat, served ready to eat. So it's called foods and beverage services. That's going to come from the Department of Health. Again, it is not an expensive license, but it does require you to make it in a home kitchen. I'm sorry, in a commercial kitchen. I really said that backwards. Food trucks, yep, you're going to need a license from the Department of Health. And again, those are easy to find and get. Food sampling and cooking demonstrations are allowed now at all farmers markets, no license needed. You do have to follow the 2014 law, and it just means you have to have a covering, so a tent, so that, you know, birds can't fly over and poop into it. And you have to wear, and they have to be 3 ounces or less, and they must contain at least one thing that you're actually selling that day. But now, prior to 2014, you really needed a license if you wanted to sample most of the food at your farmer's market, and that didn't seem right, so we got that law passed. And you can do any cooking demonstration you want to at your market now, and hand out food sampling as long as you follow those rules. Okay, pet treats. Sorry, this bill is also right now going through. Right now in the state of Minnesota, you really need a commercial license to sell pet treats, which is spendy. It's going to cost you about $175 to do it, and you have to send your recipe in, and it's got to be analyzed for nutrition facts for pets. So MDA came to us and said, let's change this. So we're trying to get pet treats to come in under cottage food, and then you can sell. It'll still be. It has to be appropriate for a cat or dog, and you have to use food ingredients at the human scale. But at least then you would not have to pay $175 and get a nutrition facts. So hopefully that bill goes through as well, and then we'll be able to change that little category. Okay. Right now, we cannot sell any food products with CBD in it. So there's no CBD food products allowed yet in the state of Minnesota. And actually in the state of Minnesota, this is governed by, the food part is governed by MDA, but down here, the non-food CBD products, you can sell them at your farmer's market, but you have to follow Minnesota's rules. And that's implemented by something called the Minnesota Board of Pharmacy. Just and stay that little link there. If you want to sell any kind of food or hemp products, you're going to need to follow those. And that is where those links come in handy. Last, I think we're getting, oh yeah, here we go. Towards the end, bath and body products, soap. They're allowed. You can sell all of that. They don't come under MDA at all. They're going to fall under FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. The interesting part, soap actually is a 4-letter word that never made it into anybody's language. There's really nothing about soap in any rule. Really what they recommend is our label requirements. So if you would list the ingredients on your soap label, because somebody might be allergic to something and you have to charge sales tax on that. So bath and body could fall under FDA. We've got a nice handout on that. The state of Washington actually has that. Crafts are allowed. You can sell all the crafts you want. Some require you to charge sales tax. And this is non-food activities. A farmer's market could do anything you wanted to at your market. You just have to ask your market management. Here we go on raw milk. Nope, you cannot sell raw milk at a farmer's market. You can only sell it from your farm and with some restrictions. Alcoholic drinks, you could sell them at a market if your market allowed it, and you would have to have a license from the Department of Public Safety. And a market would look at it if they allowed you. We've had a number of markets do sampling of like a wine tasting. They have to come in under somebody else's license, and they have to make sure that their insurance policy will cover that just in case there's ever an accident. So that is your really fast on regulations and rules for selling what you want to sell at a farmer's market. Any questions on that in particular?
Thank you so much, Kathy. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
And then if not, I'm going to quickly jump to, not that one. Okay. We also offer something called, I'm sorry, should I wait a little bit longer?
No, I think they will have spoke up if anyone had any questions. And feel free to interrupt anyone if you have questions.
Yeah. So we also we worked with the Maple Grove Farmers Market to offer a course called Start Strong. So it's for all new vendors. And this was one of the highly rated sessions. So we're just going to go through it quickly. For new vendors, even for us experienced, I was going to say older vendors, but I'm going to change it to experienced vendors. Thinking through the day, your market day logistics, how to market your business and build your sales, and then what to expect in your first session. I'm going to cover that stuff right now. So what we often find with new vendors is trying to figure out to prepare yourself for that first day of sales or your first season. So plan for some kind of healthy meals or snacks, right? If the day gets long, even if it's a 3-hour market, the day gets long. And so figure out that you're going to bring food along so you're not starving to death, and how you're going to eat that not in front of your customers. Find out where you can use a bathroom. You'd be surprised how many people show up at your farmer's market and have no idea where the porta potties are or where the bathrooms are. Bring water. Make sure you bring clothing options. I don't know how many times I went to the farmer's market and then ended up either freezing to death later on or sweating so much because it got too hot. So think ahead on what you want to bring. You might want to always have a rain poncho in your container. And then be kind to yourself. Remember, there's always next week. So think about self-care, how you're going to, the other one that comes up sometimes people forget they have children. And they forget how they're going to work their children into the day. And so if a market is 2 or 3 hours long, or maybe up to 6 hours long, how will you keep your children occupied? And so they might, if they're old enough, maybe they come and help you sell. But if they're not old enough, maybe that's when you have to bring in some childcare. All right. Be informed. Follow along with your market. Your manager is going to send you a lot of information. Try to read it. Your market manager is going to send you information that says where your booth is, how much space you get, when you have to be set up. Some markets make you be set up 30 minutes before they start. Some markets say if you're set up 30 seconds before we start, you're fine. Just make sure you're ready to go when the bell rings. Please follow your market social media and the e-newsletters if possible. And when your market posts something, make sure that you are liking it and sharing it, because that'll drive up more customers to your market. And your market will do the same thing. If you are Katie Hepner vendor and Katie is selling Easter eggs and she posts about her Easter eggs, then the market can pick that up and reshare it. Get Katie's Easter eggs at the market on Saturday. As long as you're all liking each other's posts, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and resharing and reposting, you will drive up more customers to your market so easy and really for free. It's a little bit of your time, but no cash. And then you're going to follow all your fellow vendors' social media accounts and make sure you're liking and sharing those. The more people you can get to your market, the better off you all will be. Make sure you have a checklist for what you're going to bring. You should number your supplies. You might want to label all your bins and your containers. You might want to map out your route depending on where you're going. Mapping your route maybe makes more sense if you're like in the Twin Cities. I don't think I could get lost in Northfield, but you could do a dry run. I've never done a dry run. I pretty much wing it. But if you've never set up a tent before, and set up your tables and put your tablecloths down and make sure that you got a you got some things low, and then you built height into your display. Maybe you want to do all of that at home for a dry run and make sure it looks okay. Make sure that as you're designing your display that you are ready for gale winds, right? It can get windy at farmers market. So the last thing you need are light, fluffy things that are going to blow away. So think about how you're going to weight things down and also keep them from blowing away. I'm going to go back to here. The one thing that I had to do, remember I told you I sell goat milk soap? On days that it was windy and wet, guess what happens to goat milk soap? Gave a lot of people soapy baths those days, right? So I had to come up with different ways to display my soap on wet, cold, windy days. Still sold a lot of soap, but I had to put it under containers, see-through containers, so that it didn't get rained on. Okay. Please arrive on time. You will make your fellow market vendors much happier. You'll make your market manager much happier. Just get there on time, set up so you're ready to go. You will need it in most markets. You'll need a tent. We call them tents or canopies, and you'll need weights. In this case, a lot of people said putting up a tent is a 2-person job. Some tents you can put up by yourself. but don't be afraid to ask another vendor to help you. Let's say you're short of somebody, your teenage kid didn't show up to help. You get there and you're a one-woman show. One of your fellow vendors will help you put up your tent. I mean, just ask for help and be ready to help somebody else if they're showing up a little bit late and need help putting their tent up. All right. So token programs, that'll depend. You're going to hear from Wadena and Staples Markets. We'll see if they are offering SNAP or anything this year. Oh, am I about a minute over my time? Katie, I'm looking at my time here.
You can wrap up in the next few minutes.
Yep. Good job. Okay. So the markets will talk about if they're doing SNAP or Power Produce or whatever. At a farmer's market, we really do talk about competition, not so cooperative competition, and being friends with our fellow and our sister vendors. So we're all at a farmer's market. Our competitors are not our other vendors. Our competitors are where it's really easy to buy things like Quick Trip. Quick Trip is open, they're cheap, and they're open all day, all night practically, right? So the grocery stores, the big stores, those are our competitors. Our other vendors at a market are not. They're our cooperative competition. So keep that in mind as you sell at a market. All right, I am going to end here because it's 6:47, and this really goes into some marketing and business. And we can share these slides too, Katie, with the group later.
Perfect. That was a question in the chat, is if those slides could be shared. So great.
Yes, I'll get everything to Katie, and she can push it out. Okay. So I think I've used up my time. So folks, any last questions for me? Otherwise, I can be quiet and I'll listen in to the rest of the folks.
Any questions for Kathy before we keep going? All right, if you think of anything, we'll pause for questions at the very end too. So you'll have another opportunity. Thank you so much, Kathy, for this very informative presentation. All right, next I'm gonna turn it over to Alicia Bauman. She is the coordinator for the Staples Farmers Market. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, Katie, thank you for having me, and thank you, Kathy. That was a lovely presentation. That was great to kick off for vendors. So I'm Alicia Bauman. I work for Lakewood Health System. I get the privilege of overseeing our community health work at Lakewood. Lakewood highly values our local growers and really takes pride in providing operational support for the Staples area farmers market. So that market is located right at our main hospital campus. We had a brief sabbatical last season due to all the COVID stuff and being a hospital. So we were off-site last summer, but we're back on board and have carved out some space right at the main campus location off of Highway 10. That market operates every Thursday throughout the season. We kick off the market at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and it goes until 5:30. This year, our start date has been set for May 27th. So you can mark calendars if you're interested in becoming a vendor with us at our market. So May 27th is the start date. It usually goes into October. We leave that a little loose at this time of the year. Usually Mother Nature helps determine that end date for us very quickly sometimes. But typically it's that mid-October range that we run through. So again, Lakewood sponsors and facilitates the market. We really provide all the operational level support. So Kathy mentioned some of those kind of value add programs that markets can do and how sometimes they can be, have a cost and then need to have someone to organize and facilitate that. Lakewood takes over all of that operational kind of logistical arrangement and cost as part of our just our community benefit and really providing support to the market. So we do have SNAP and EBT machines that are up and running. We also engage our patients that are SNAP eligible participants and coming to the market. So we do specific marketing and promotions to really drive that participation. So as Kathy mentioned, they can double their buying power at the market. It really not only enhances our vendors' pocketbooks, but it enhances the nutritional foods that our SNAP families can bring home and have with their family members. We also facilitate credit card machines. So you don't have to be a vendor that accepts credit cards, but if someone shows up to the market with only plastic, we can help turn those into bucks that they can purchase from you. And additionally, we have our own liquid market bucks programs. So we recognize the importance of buying local and eating fresh, and we facilitate our employee wellness market bucks program. So we'll match our employees 5 for 5 at the market each and every week. An employee can come out and they pay 5, and Lakewood pays the other 5, and that doubles the buying power too. Additionally, we operate a food pharmacy at Lakewood, and we really incorporate our market bucks into our food pharmacy initiatives. So we have community members and families that participate in that food pharmacy that are shopping each and every week at the market and getting market bucks from Lakewood to do so. So I think, over the last couple of years, we average about $20,000 in Lakewood market bucks that gets cycled through the market. Market bucks that Lakewood issues can be used on produce, honey, eggs, and meat. Really trying to hone in on healthful consumption of nutritious foods. Typically, we have about 7 to 9 vendors that join us each and every week. And we're always eager and happy to invite new faces. We do have an annual vendor membership fee, but if you are a new face and just want to try our market out, it's just a $15 weekly or one-time fee that you can pay. Otherwise, it's a $55 annual membership to vend with us all season long. What else? I think the only thing I'll add is that we are a hospital campus, and we do take COVID-19 quite seriously and doing our parts to provide safe venues, to reduce COVID transmissions and follow regulatory guidelines around COVID precautions and safety. So that is part of our vendor agreement for this season going forward. So if you're a new vendor, we can get you introduced to that. Again, Lakewood does take care of all the operations. So any of those COVID-related precautions, any hand washing stations, all the applicable signage and marketing, our community health team really takes the lead on helping support our growers and our vendors at the market. I think I hit the main points.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions about the Staples Market?
I think Kathy just has things for me to do. I'd love to, Kathy.
Okay, I just laughed out loud. Alicia, yes, okay, folks, I don't know. The programs that she is offering are incredible. This is really good. You need to, we'll have you present at one of our next open forums. There you go.
That would be great. I'd love to.
I'm glad that the Staples Market is really measuring up. All right, any questions for Alicia? All right, if not, we'll turn it over to Les, who will talk more about the Wadena market. Les?
Hello, everybody. I'm Les, and I'm the president of the Wadena Growers Association. And we have a market also. We actually have 2 markets. We have a Friday market, and that starts, our first one's going to be June 4th. And that's on Friday at Tri-County Hospital in the Wesley building. And it's from 2 to 5:30. And we go until about mid-October, late October. It kind of depends what the weather's doing. And like Alicia said, you never know, We've been out there when it's been snowing out and it's not any fun. So kind of play it by ear there and see what happens with the weather. We also have a Tuesday market, and that starts a little later in the summer. And that's on Tuesday mornings, and that starts at 7 o'clock and goes till like 11 o'clock. And that's held at downtown Wadena at the Burlington Northern Park. And we only have a few vendors that go to that. It's not as big as the Friday market, but that usually starts about the middle of July and goes for approximately 2 months, maybe a little longer. It depends on who's there for vendors and what kind of produce they have at that time. Couple other things that our Friday market, we have a lot of green space and a lot of shade. And so the hospital has been very good to us about sharing some space, their space with us on Fridays. And it's nice to have the green grass and the shade. It just seems like it's that much cooler at the farmer's market. Some other things that our market provides is we have vendor insurance. Actually, it's a liability insurance through the Minnesota Farmers Market Association, and that's for the market itself. And we're a member of the Minnesota Farmers Market Association, and we're also a member of Minnesota Growing. And so our vendors can take advantage of any of those programs with those organizations. We do have a vendor application that we're currently working on. We don't have it finalized yet for this year, but hopefully soon. And there is a fee for being a member, and ours is $100 a year, and you're allowed to set up at both markets if you choose to, or one or the other. And we increased it last year. Just there was a lot of vendors saying that we needed to increase it, so we did, and we're keeping it the same as what it was last year. We typically have about 10 vendors at the market, and then a little bit later in the summer and in the fall, when there's more produce available, a lot of times we'll have 12 to 15 vendors there. And we have some craft people. I do maple syrup and birch syrup along with other produce. We do have some other specialty craft people that are there. And but there's a lot of produce and those types of tomatoes and those types of things. We also, in Wadena, we have a friendly rider bus, and we have tickets that customers can get rides to and from the market with these tickets. And we've had them for a couple of years, and that works very good, especially for some of the seniors. If they want to come to the market, it's a free ride for them. And we'll give them, when they come to the market, we'll give them 2 tickets so that they can get back home that day. And then the following week, they can come to the market again. So that's worked out very well for us. And if we start getting low on tickets, we're going to see if we can find more people to, it was donated, and we had a grant to work on some of that stuff. So that's why we're able to provide that. One other thing that our market has for vendors is we have a trailer that's set up for tables, chairs, tents, display booths, and this trailer can be used by the vendors if they want to go to a different community and set up in Wadena County or at a special event. And we're encouraging our vendors to use it. We just bought it about a year ago, and we didn't get to use it last year because of COVID. So we're really looking forward to maybe expanding that part of our market. As staples, we have a lot of other programs. We have the Power of Produce, and this year we're going to add the Power of Produce Plus. That's for seniors that are 65 and older, and they get a $2 token, and they can spend it at the market. Every week they come to the market, they can get a $2 token, and they can spend it on produce. You can't buy rolls and that kind of stuff with it, but it is for produce. And we've had very good turnout with our kids' Power of Produce program, called POP program. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think we had about 35, 40 kids last year that come on a pretty regular basis to the market. And it helps our market, brings parents in, and helps our vendors also. We also do a SNAP EBT, and we do the Farmers Market Nutrition Program. If you are a vendor and you want to get into that, there are classes you have to take in order to be not really licensed, but you get a certification for that so that you can be So you can take those checks from the farmers market nutrition program. We also do the market bucks. Like Alicia said, you on EBT, if a person spends $10 of their EBT money, they can also get $10 in market bucks. So they can get $20 and only $10 out of their pocket to spend at the farmer's market. And they can do that every week. Other things we got going on is we have Marilyn with the University of Minnesota Extension, and she puts on cooking classes. And some of those are on site, sometimes they're online or they're on Zoom or however she does them. Last year, most of them were done on Zoom, but we have cooking classes, and then those participants are given market bucks or some type of a voucher to come and buy produce at the market. And in those classes, they're taught how to look at different vegetables and how to process them and how to cook them and how to feed them to their family and make a healthy choice when doing so. We are looking at doing some special events this year. It kind of depends on what happens as far as some of the COVID regulations and some of those things. So we're kind of just playing it by ear right now. And we are adhering to the COVID CDC recommendations and the Minnesota Farmers Market Association recommendations on COVID and social distancing. And we keep a extra table in front of our vendors. So to try to maintain that 6-foot distance between the vendor and the customer. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you so much, Les. I'm getting so excited for the summer. It needs to be here now so we can get to these great markets. Any questions for Les? All right, we have a little bit of time left, which means you'll get more of your evening back. But before we close,
Katie, TJ's got a question in the chat.
Oh, let me see here.
It's a good question.
Other than vendors' fees, how are both markets funded and what are your attendance numbers like?
I can answer. Lakewood Health System funds the market in its entirety. So any of the marketing, we do have 2 community health staff that staff the market each and every week. Attendance numbers, they vary through the season. Les, you might have a better idea on this too, but you know, the end of June, July, and August into September seem to be robust. The 2 ends of the season seem to be a little bit lower. But it is volume-wise, I mean, a few hundred is not, is not uncommon during one of our peak August weeks.
Yeah, I would agree. We typically, the first month is typically around 50, 60, maybe 80 to 100 customers, and at peak, over 300.
It does a pretty good climb and then fall. Yes, the end looks like the beginning.
Thanks for answering that. Any other questions? Feel free to put it in the chat or just unmute yourself. Are there any more opportunities to get more involved? Alicia, Les, what are opportunities to get more involved with your markets?
Well, we currently have a market manager, and we apply for some grant funding to help pay for that position. And there's a lot of volunteer work that needs to be done. We put out signage every week. We're working on marketing. We're working on donations to the market from area businesses and those types of things. And so there's always room for volunteers to help.
Alicia, how about at your market?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think oftentimes word of mouth is the best thing to help our markets out. And so coming and visiting us, if you're interested in being a vendor, we'd love to have you, as well as, kind of like Kathy mentioned, sharing on Facebook and just really encouraging folks to tap into local markets that are available and really our local growers, just even direct purchasing options that, reframing where and how we are looking at food access points across our community really helps us all grow. I think during non-COVID times, like Les mentioned, we'd have more events at the market around National Farmers Market Weeks and various different tours and demonstrations. That has kind of weaned a bit with COVID. So we're going to have to just figure out how this summer looks. But reach back if there's special talents you have. I love markets that have live music. So sometimes we get that kind of randomly pop up that our one of our egg guys will have a guitar stashed in his car too. But I think any market is happy to have time, talent, and then just volume of people coming to join the day. It's really a nice community gathering event.
When I send the follow-up email afterwards, I'll be sure to include contact information for those of you who might want to dive even deeper. All right, the next question, and any of you are welcome to answer this, Kathy, Alicia, or Les. What are common mistakes a first-time vendor makes?
So many. Not bringing enough cash. For me, we had shelf stable product, but how does a new vendor know like how many cupcakes to bring or how many bunches of cilantro will sell? So if any, those are the things, those things you might want to ask your other sister and brother vendors. Ask somebody else who's there. Les, what do you got? Or Alicia? Yeah. I think I've made them all. If there was a mistake to be made, I'm pretty sure I got it.
The hard part is knowing how much to bring. And, 1 week, one item might be a good seller and you don't have any of it. So you bring a bunch the next week and you go home with a bunch of it because it doesn't sell. So.
Yeah, I think Kathy covered some of these earlier. It always seems to be windy. It doesn't matter what day, what time of year. And so just enough weights to hold tents down is helpful. Same with tables and just heavy things on the table. We usually can help out with the cash if there's an issue or there is somebody that didn't bring enough change. We have the abilities to help in that space. But certainly lean into other vendors. I think it's a really helpful community that, ask questions. For us, if, we're connected to our vendors before the market, we'll put teasers out about what you're bringing. So we'll send a system-wide email to our 800 employees, teasing them that strawberries are ready. And that really gets people excited in Minnesota when we have things into production and that are coming on board. So I think just being in contact with those market managers, anyone doing the marketing for the market, and just asking for help. I don't think anyone expects you to come as a first-time vendor having it all figured out. I think we still learn each and every week, and we've been helping and we don't even grow anything, but it takes learnings, and it's a great group to learn together with.
I want to go back to what Les said though. Have an idea about what you're going to do with stuff that doesn't sell, right? So in either the communities, at the end of the market, if you had extra produce that really wasn't going to hold over well, is there a food shelf that they could get that food to? In Riverwalk in Northfield, our market was on a Saturday and the food shelf was closed on a Saturday. So that was not an option for us. What do you folks do?
So our food pharmacy will also purchases directly from our growers, and then our hospital nutrition services purchases directly from many of our vendors as well. So oftentimes we can help recycle if there is an abundance at the end of the day. We also do a fresh delivered, which is a separate outside of the typical market, but it's about 4 vendors. On Tuesdays, we do deliveries to our senior apartment buildings with sort of little mini CSA shares. So oftentimes they'll either hold over until that Tuesday if they can last, or we help find homes.
We have some vendors that our main markets on Friday, so they also go to another farmer's market on Saturday, so they're able to hold stuff over. And last year I got rained out a couple on Fridays. I had a lot of stuff. And so I ended up setting up in another community up in Topeka and setting up there. And it's not really a farmer's market, but we're trying to get one going up there. So I was able to sell some of my produce then. So that worked out for me.
So I think that is important, whether you're a cottage food producer. If you're bringing food home, will any of it freeze and then thaw okay for a sale for another week? Or do you, Ryan Pesh, who's one of the best farmer extension economists, I mean, he's got good boots on the ground, right? And he's got good experience. He always says to have various sales points. So you might sell at a farmer's market, you might sell from your farm, you might sell at another farmer's market on a different day. You have to kind of have multiple sales channels. And if you're going to make it as a local food producer, you need to have more than just one thing. You are going to need to have several, 3 or 4, in order to sell your product and, make sure you can move it.
We have another question that popped up in the chat. And Alicia, you halfway answered this, but I'll give you time to expand, and Les as well. Do you guys have any vendors selling meat or poultry at the market? With the extremely limited number of inspected processing facilities available, I think there are a number of producers that would be interested in offering quality products, but are not allowed because they cannot get them through an inspected processor. Do you have any suggestions? This is from Corey.
So we have had some meat producers in the past. The rabbit I think was there last year as well. A chicken producer, but it seems like he typically just takes orders and sells directly off of his farm, so not necessarily at the market each and every week. And we've also had a pork producer before.
I would like to, so Alicia, you just said something that's pretty good though, what you just said. So you can, that's what I did. I would try to go to the market and sell $500 worth of eggs and goat milk soap and, dehydrated rhubarb fruit roll-ups. But I really sold about $1,500 every week of taking orders, right? Because my meat processor was a custom exempt. So I can't sell pieces, but I can sell wholes and halves. I can take orders for turkey at Thanksgiving turkey. So you can always treat your farmer's market as your storefront. And that may only be a portion or a percentage of your sales, but it may really finance all of the rest of your sales off your farm. So that's pretty good. Corey, it's a statewide problem. It's that the lack of meat processing plants in Minnesota is so severe that there are bills going through the state legislature right now. MDA is going to grab some of the COVID dollars. We are going to throw a ton of money. Wait. One of your colleges up there is going to add, don't you have a community college?
That is where Corey Detloff works, is at Central Lakes College for Ag-Centric and Farm Business Management. So what a fantastic plug.
Right? Oh my gosh. So there's going to be money going there. We really, really need more meat processing in this state. It is a problem. So you're right. Until that happens, that we can't get there, but there's going to be a ton of money going to getting these stand up these programs and finding people that want to get trained and become good meat people. But on the other side, remember that for poultry and rabbit, you can process on your farm and sell at a farmer's market. That is the one exception there in those rules. So you could do that if you like. You'd have to think through your food, you think through your food safety. You're going to want to like to butcher animals, right? And you're going to have to be able to keep them clean, cold, all of that. But for poultry and rabbit, you got a little bit more wiggle room, not so much on the red meats.
And Kathy, I guess that's why I asked that question, because with CLC looking at the meat processing program, We're struggling even with that program to figure out how to do that with USDA inspection as well. Or a minimum, just because of some of the processing, the slaughter, right? The slaughter is always kind of the hot topic, the issue. And within that, we're looking at different options there, but we're really struggling on how do we make that USDA certified so that we can do something with those products. And there's an extreme limitation there. And there's so many regulations on that right now that there's a lot of producers interested in that, but they have no outlet for those products because they cannot get them through a certified inspected facility just because their availability is not there.
Yeah, we're booked out for 2 years down here. And that I've never been so organized in my life. But I've literally got butchering dates out into 2023. I've never done that before. I know. But anyway, Corey, I'm so glad you're doing that up there. That is desperately needed in the state.
All right, we do have another question here. What are markets doing to make farmers markets more accessible to underserved communities?
Well, one of the things we're doing is, I mentioned that we have a portable trailer that has all the market stuff in there, tables, tents, chairs. Pretty much the vendor could bring their produce and put it in a trailer or have it in their vehicle and hook up to the trailer and take it to any other community and set up. Of course, there's have to abide by what the community is allowing and those types of things. But we're trying to do some of that in Wadena County, and we were going to do it last year, but because of COVID, we didn't get a chance to do it.
Yeah, this is Alicia. Really, our food pharmacy program that we facilitate out of Lakewood is focused on families that experience food insecurity. And so that's broad-based, trying to reach populations that may have financial difficulties in accessing healthy, nutritious foods for their family. Additionally, our other population that we hone in on is our senior community. So our Fresh Delivered program brings farmers market food directly to those buildings, just to reduce transportation barriers and ensure accessibility to fresh produce there. Certainly, if vendors approached us that had limitations as far as that vendor application fee, we're happy to have that conversation and really reduce barriers around how to get started with the market and to help grow the business and to ensure, we certainly don't want that $55 fee to be a barrier for folks to try to sell with us. So I think generally those that we serve, and then how we try to engage and promote the market and reduce as many barriers as we can, transportation less. I think it's great that you also use Friendly Rider in that space. I think we're trying to ensure that the market is accessible to all across our community.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Feel free to pop them in the chat or unmute yourself. All right. Not seeing any other questions pop up, but that doesn't mean you're not typing. So I'll give it a few more seconds because I don't want to move on if someone has a big thought. All right, I'll assume that no one has any more questions. Unmute yourself now and yell, hey. All right. Thank you so much, Alicia, Les, and Kathy, and everyone for all of your questions. This has been great discussions. I think farmers markets are one of the unsung heroes of our community because it's an easy outlet to get involved and get some really good, delicious food, which is why I personally love markets. So I will be sending a follow-up email to all the registrants with more information. This video has been recorded and it will be up on our website in about a week. I'll do an email with the link to that when it is up. So thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much to our presenters again. And have a good evening, everyone, and a happy summer.
Thank you. Thank you. Great session. I'm inspired.
Thanks, Kathy.